Dwan, known in the cyber world as Dur, is one of the most respected online poker players. He plays high-stakes cash games with the world's top players on a daily basis. Dwan has won and lost millions of dollars in the online poker arena, but the young poker pro always seems to come out on top. One of his strengths as a player is his ability to bluff effectively. What's the best way to hide nervous physical reactions when you're bluffing?
Depends how observant your opponents are. Sometimes you want to let them see things so that you can elicit folds.
Give off false tells?
Yeah, and other times you want to just do the exact same thing with all your hands, usually only when you're playing very good opponents. In which case you just want to do, like, maybe act the same way, look the same place, regardless of what you're holding. The hard part is you don't get to play good hands and bad hands at the same time, so you need to decide, when you have a good hand that you're going to do the same thing with a bad hand and vice versa.
When is the best time to execute a bluff in a cash game? How do you know that it's a good time?
That's a pretty tough question. There's some spots when people are short on money, which would be a good time generally, but mainly it's dependent on the board and what you think someone's holding, and usually you're going to want some history on them, some information I should say, which can be either history that they fold in spots or something like that, or it could even be a lack of history that you don't know them, and say it's a high stakes game and they're new to there. It's probably an unknown person who isn't going to put in their stack marginally, you could say, and maybe make big call downs. So you're going to want to put them on weak hands generally when you're bluffing. But there's other times where, versus very good opponents, they have strongish hands and it's pretty obvious they do, so they wouldn't usually fold. And if it's a spot you almost never bluff in, they might know that, and you can get some really crazy bluffs to go by and get folds.
If you're caught bluffing, should you wait a while before you try to bluff again?
Depends on who you try to bluff and who else is at the table. Sometimes versus really good opponents, it's better to bluff the next hand then. And generally versus extremely first level opponents, you should definitely wait a while. Most people are somewhere in between, so it's not an easy answer.
If you're bluffing in a cash game and you're raised, how do you know when to re-raise with another bluff re-raise?
Generally don't, would be a good answer. Generally don't, and sometimes you have a really good read on a person, or a good enough read, I guess, and feel it's a good spot.
Is it ever okay to call pre-flop with the intention of bluffing later on in the hand in a cash game?
Yeah, definitely.
And how do you know when that's the good thing to do?
Generally, it's the player that you're playing against is going to be the main thing deciding that. Generally it's who you're playing against. There's some people that just, in certain spots, fold too much or call too much, and if they fold too much, then you might want to, get in spots, regardless of your holding, just to try and bluff them.
How important is your position at the table when you're bluffing in a cash game?
Relative to the blinds and button, you mean? Definitely very, very important. You need to be aware of your range, their ranges, what it seems you're representing and stuff. And also, having position on someone means you get more information. You get one extra piece of information, whether they check, whether they bet, and it makes you can read their hands a little more accurately and decide what to do slightly better.
If you bluff at a pot and you end up winning the pot, when is it the right move to show your bluff in a cash game?
Almost never.
So you don't what about in a tournament? Would you show your bluff more often?
Probably even less often. That said, a lot of people do it just because it's amusing. It makes the game more fun. As far as your interaction with that particular player, it's generally not going to help that much because they're going to think through the hand a lot and think through what you did when you were bluffing. But a lot of times other people in hands, if we're playing a pot and one of us bluffs and shows it, maybe both of us were paying attention, staring at the screen, staring at the table, wherever it is we're playing, and the other people playing didn't notice at all and just saw, wow, 4 high and you bet that much. And that's all they realize, and then the game gets a little better, they put in more chips, maybe they call you in spots they shouldn't, maybe, I don't know, they check to you too much, you get people to play non-optimally versus you.
How can you tell when another player is bluffing in a cash game, especially if you're playing online?
I mean, it's not very often that you can tell with 100% certainty, regardless of what some people might try to make you believe about them being able to actually tell other people's whole cards. There's times where you might be 90 to 95%, whatever, but what I'm trying to say is, I guess it's not really that you can tell someone's bluffing, but you think it's more likely they're bluffing than the amount they should be or whatever, and so you call hoping to win.
What do you think is the biggest tell in a live tournament that someone's bluffing? Or you can tell us multiple tells.
The biggest tell will be them feeling uncomfortable, but people convey that a lot differently than it may seem. Some people look the most comfortable when they're uncomfortable, but if you actually know them or know their personality, when they're sitting there looking around like this, means they're completely uncomfortable and they're trying to look comfortable. And other people, when they're just sitting there staring at one spot, not moving at all, that means they're uncomfortable. So it varies, I guess I'd say, but generally, a feeling of people being uncomfortable is a tell that they're bluffing. And a lot of times you can get good reads on that by the way they talk. If they talk in a way there's no real set, if a person says this word, they're bluffing, obviously. But if you use logic to figure out, it really seems that person's extremely uncomfortable, then a lot of times they're going to have a weaker hand.